May 1945. The war is over, but beneath the surface, something still moves. Hundreds of German U-boats lie scattered between Norway, France, and the North Sea. Their commanders carry orders no manual ever taught. Don't fight. Don't win. Disappear. At dawn, grey silhouettes glide from their harbours, silent, disciplined, without flags, without purpose, without future. Some crews already know this will be their final voyage. Over the radio, one sentence echoes again and again. Scuttle the boats. Erase everything. It is the end of a weapon that once made Germany seem invincible and now vanishes in its own silence. While the cities lie in ruins, the submarine fleet of the Third Reich remains surprisingly intact. Over 1,100 U-boats were built since 1939, a third of them still afloat in May 1945. The Allies called them the Grey Wolves, a fleet that once haunted the Atlantic. Convoys from Canada and the United States became prey, in an endless hunt between the seen and the unseen. Each strike, precise, silent, lethal. But the cost was unbearable. Out of 40,000 German submariners, only about 10,000 survived. 3 out of 4 never returned. Their graves lie in the cold, dark silence of the deep. When Germany surrendered, dozens of boats stood in Norway, Denmark, and France. Some commanders hoped to surrender to the British, others to the Soviets. Few understood what awaited them. For many, uncertainty was worse than death. Between May 5th and May 10th, 1945, a final wave moved through the radio channels. Scuttle as ordered, it said, and more than 200 U-boats sank by their own hand, not in battle, but in obedience. Some crews abandoned ship, others stayed inside. In quiet bays, under grey skies, they opened the valves, watched the water rise through the control room, and waited until the sea claimed them. They called it honor, but it was exhaustion, a final attempt to choose their own ending. Others, still seaworthy, were ordered to surrender. They sailed toward Loch Eriboll in northern Scotland, 156 grey silhouettes gliding silently into the fjord. British sailors watched as German captains lowered their flags, saluted once, and stood in silence. When the Allies took control, they faced an enormous challenge. Hundreds of U-boats scattered across the Atlantic, loaded with explosives, secrets, and advanced technology. Many were barely seaworthy. Fuel tanks empty, batteries damaged, hulls corroded. Others were patched together with whatever metal remained. They were ghosts, drifting relics of a war already lost. By summer 1945, the decision was made. These machines must never rise again. Operation Deadlight, a cold name for a cold task. More than 150 German submarines were to be destroyed, far off the Irish coast, in the deep North Atlantic. Some were towed there, others sailed under their own fading power, sometimes with the same men who had fought the Royal Navy only weeks before. The British arranged them in lines, connected them with steel cables, and sank them one by one. No ceremony, no announcement. Only wind, waves, and the grinding sound of metal. As the hatches closed for the last time, many boats refused to die easily. Some floated for minutes, twisting and turning, as if they resisted the war's final silence. A British officer later wrote, "We watched them roll over, one after another. No smoke, no sound, only the sea taking them back." But not all went as planned. Some lines snapped, and a few submarines drifted for days until they struck rocks or vanished beneath the waves on their own. Others sank slowly, almost peacefully, like beasts returning to the forest to die. The sea they once ruled became their final enemy and their grave. Despite all orders of destruction, over 100 submarines escaped Operation Deadlight. Not because they were spared, but because they were simply too valuable. The Allies soon realized. In its final months, Germany had built something far ahead of its time. The Type 21 and 23 U-boats. They could stay submerged for days, move silently with electric propulsion, and outrun almost any Allied destroyer. To the victors, they were treasures of steel. The Americans towed theirs to Portsmouth, the British to Loch Ryan and Gosport, and the Soviets received several as war reparations. In the months that followed, German engineers, often under supervision or quiet coercion, worked alongside their former enemies. In sealed docks, behind guarded fences, the U-boats were dismantled, measured, documented. Some remained in service for years, not as weapons, but as teachers. They trained new crews, tested sonar systems, and taught future navies what to fear and what to build. Knowledge was the true prize of the war, and it would not be sunk. From these studies came the USS Nautilus, the world's first nuclear submarine, and the Soviet Whiskey class, which prowled the oceans for decades. Ironically, German engineering outlived the Reich itself. It laid the foundation for the next arms race. The Cold War beneath the waves, what began as destruction, ended as rebirth. The grey wolves were dead, but their descendants soon swam again under different flags. Decades passed. The sites where the boats had gone down faded from maps and memory alike. Only fishermen who lost their nets knew that something still waited below. In the 1980s, British divers began to chart the wrecks of Operation Deadlight. With sonar and remote cameras, they swept the seafloor and found them. Rows of metal stretched across miles, sleeping side by side in eternal formation. On their screens, familiar shapes emerged. Rounded conning towers, split hulls, closed hatches, sometimes even tools or remnants of uniforms inside. Some boats were astonishingly intact. You could still read the faded German lettering on control panels. Others were torn apart by pressure, ripped open, but hauntingly preserved as if they had sunk yesterday. Divers spoke of the feeling of being watched. No sound but their own breathing, no movement but the flicker of their lights against rusted steel. Many never returned, not from danger, but from the weight of what they had seen. Today, these wrecks are considered war graves. They cannot be touched or salvaged. Inside them rest the men whose names were long erased, whose final messages may never have been sent. The sea has kept them, not to honor, but to remember. Some historians call them the steel memory of war. Others say, they are not ships anymore, they are shadows. Nearly 80 years after the war, more than 200 German U-boats still lie on the ocean floor. Some are just dim outlines on sonar screens. Others break the surface at low tide like the bones of a drowned giant. No memorial, no gravestone. Only water, wind, and the distant echo of war. But every time a fisherman loses his net, or a diver brushes against a corroded wall of steel, a piece of that history returns. The men who built them sought power. The men who sailed them sought survival. And in the end, the sea took them all. Indifferent, complete, eternal.